Hello, hello. Welcome once again to C9K. My name is Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster. Happy Friday, and welcome to this week's Clusterfuck.
We are back once again. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing extremely well, minus the fact that Canada's internet's down. So I managed to scramble on this morning. I apologize if something drops. It's not my fault.
Okay. You did a little chop already.
Yeah, it's let's just say Canada's not doing too well. We had really bad hangover from last night. So
the entire country. Wow.
The entire country's a little hungover. Yes.
Oh,
and it had nothing to do with hockey this time. What about you, Steve? How are you doing?
I'm all right, except I feel a bit ropey because I actually went to the gym. I decided to, pull my finger out of my pandemic butt and try and get back into fitness. And turns out that's hard work, and I'm feeling the pain. But onward and upward.
All right. Well, that's just a lot of pain going around Canada. So a little bit of craziness,
self-induced.
Yeah, and some really good discussion, especially with GitHub coming up. So should we just get into the general news?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ooh, the choppiness continues.
Yeah, let's hit that. Hey, look at that. You didn't make it into KubeCon like everybody else. Here's another opportunity to be a on-stage presence at Cloud Native Security Con. I bought the ticket to this. It was some money well spent at the European one, and I'm definitely going to go again. But you have until the 25th of July to get something into SecureCon. So
I think for me and you, I think this is part of my favorite part of KubeCon.
Yeah,
because it's tight-knit community, a lot of good talks. When I was at Open Source Summit too, the supply chain security track was really good. It's well curated. So get your talks in. You have until July 25th. They typically will push it out a week, but I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah, if you've got something good. I'm going to throw two things in there just because I have learned that helps. And we'll see where it goes. One of my things I'm going to be submitting is to do with SLSA, which we'll be talking about later today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What else we got going on? So, a lot of information at the start, and then we get into the good topics. So
well, exactly.
A couple free things coming up.
This section's for you, the viewer.
Ooh.
So where are we? You can control securing your software supply chain with sigstore. That's a lot of S's, and this is something designed by ChainGuard which is of course associated with Sigstore, which is of course associated with SLSA, which is of course associated with OpenSSF, which is of course associated with everything. And so don't believe this. I did this already. I have the little certificate on my LinkedIn, so I'm a very special boy. It says 7 weeks, 1 to 2 hours per week. I bashed through this in 2 days. It's self-paced. It makes it sound like there's a start date. I don't know if that means anything. Just enroll. It's totally free. You got to pay a couple dollars if you want the little certificate, right? So if your company lets you expense stuff like that, then just pay the money, and then you get a test. Test is not that hard. And you look like a supply chain guru. Pow. But it was like, from a hands-on perspective, this is essentially what fueled what I'm going to talk about at the end. So it enlightened me into the wonderful ways of cosine, recore, and I assume it's called Fulcio or Fulcio. I don't know how to say it because they don't say it, right? Fulcio, how they all connect together, how signing works and contributes toward your efforts towards SLSA. So that's what we're going to talk about at the end. So
very cool. How long did it take?
Took me 2 days.
2 days. But in terms of hours, what do you think? Like 4, 6 hours?
8.
8?
8, because I was like, when it did something, I'm like, what the hell is it done here? And I'm like, I went and was digging into the background, trying to figure out, how did that just work? I don't understand what that just did.
Yeah, so a full 8 hours of useful time, maybe like 4 to 6 if you want to fly through it. Yeah,
if you just want to get the cert, you can do it really fast.
Maybe one of those, be a cert hero on LinkedIn.
You got it. That's
that's
pretty cool.
And you're doing the demo coming up later as well, right?
You got it. I'm gonna blast you through what I thought were the key points of this in like 10 minutes.
Sweet. So
and then
a free course and then a free book.
A free book. Download the ebook, Honeycomb O'Reilly book, Observability Engineering, and it's not that tiny. So if free books are on the cards, this link is down below. If you're on YouTube, or if you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube. You'll get it there.
And there's the observability guru, Liz Fong Jones. I feel like they're everything.
I know, right? So the content is good. Go get it. Be better at observability. It's complicated.
Yeah, it really is, though. Yeah, there's so many things going on. All right, and now we get into the good stuff.
Yeah, this is. I didn't know whether this was going to be on the WTF section or the end of news. Right? It's so controversial, but there we go. The Software Freedom Conservancy, the not-for-profit organization that supports legal services, blah blah blah, open source projects. They have an ugly website. Nevertheless, called in the open source community to ditch GitHub. Why? Because of Copilot. Because you got to pay for it now.
Yeah, and for context, Copilot is, what would you say? It's a machine learning algorithm that auto-completes code that can give you code blocks. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think so. It's an AI buddy for writing code faster, but it's drawing its intelligence from the billions of lines. I'm sure there's something in there that tells us how many lines, but you can imagine it's GitHub, right? So it's got tons of money. And then there's the OpenAI is what's powering it. Also an organization that I like the term Microsoft plowed 1 billion into.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's some really good links in here. I only have this link here. I do recommend clicking through some of these links, and because I thought, okay, like you can't just say ditch GitHub, but then you see what they did. Like they've been badgering Microsoft and GitHub since we first featured Copilot actually on this show. I think maybe even season 1, and saying, hey, like it's all cool, like you're doing this, but there's license attribution and all sorts of issues associated with
code.
You can't just pull code, right? So if it's a full code block, if it happens to be some form of algorithmic IP, you need to make sure you're doing it right. And they just essentially blew them off. Like that was the story. And there's another article, so go check it out. So they got a little ticked and they said, oh, bail out on it. So I don't know where you're supposed to go necessarily.
Yeah, it is also really tough. You think about it. If I'm pulling code, you have to draw the line, especially with AI ML. It's kind of a black box in terms of what it's learning and all the data sets learning from. So if you just point it at the internet, you got to make sure there's some constraints. And then how do you draw the line between there's this code block and it came from this exact GitHub account because I guarantee you some of the recommendations are also like, not every piece of code is unique, right?
No.
So
no, I mean,
there's a lot of overlap, and I think it's just going to be very, very hard to police, right?
Well, it's funny, right? If you look at Amazon's competing product, the recently launched Code Whisper, it does give you some kind of visibility on the license from which it pulled the segment. So it seems to have got it together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I haven't clicked on this yet, but that is what all the news has been, that they've got a competing tool and it has more visibility and transparency.
Yeah, you know that on the back end, the PMs were talking about this, right? They're like, oh, Copilot's getting ripped for this. They're getting ripped for last year. If we're going to compete, we have to compete in a different way. Let's build this in, right? You know that in terms of the conversation, that's how it went.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, completely. I mean, Amazon and AWS they're no fools.
No,
they got the finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
So take a look. I see where that will develop. I don't know where everyone's going to run to. Like I said, GitLab. I don't know, like you said, like
yeah, we got a big GitLab CVE coming up that we're going to talk about. So
yeah, there you go.
Where do you go?
Yeah, who knows? But nevertheless, know that they're being naughty. So, and by the way, you know what we did Copilot like a year ago, right? On the super beta version, right? Because of that, I don't have to pay for it. So I still have Copilot for free.
That's awesome because you're an early adopter.
Yeah, because I was an early adopter. I have free Copilot. So hey, look out, open source community. I'm stealing
not a
your
bad model. Just from a pure political standpoint, it is very interesting watching these big companies dump money into these, let's say, open source organizations, and then they just get criticized by the organizations that they're funding.
Yeah,
it's a weird dynamic, honestly, at tech. It's one of the things I'll never get used to.
Yeah,
it's
nuts.
Speaking of craziness,
hey,
WTF? Yeah, we actually have a really good lineup of some weird things going on in the world, especially in tech.
This is kind of one that wouldn't normally make the show, except it's funny. And it's probably, I don't know if you've ever, where is he? The Japanese man lost a flash drive on a drunken night out in his 40s, a boozy night in the city of Amagasaki, northwest of Osaka. Yeah. Anyway, have you ever been to Japan?
No, but you were telling me the story about the work culture. So
get
it. You can tell the story.
Yeah. Anyway, that's as far as we want to go with that story. So yeah, I completely get how somebody lost a USB drive, but it's just hilarious that he had, was it 465,000 people or something on this drive, and he had no permission to have it. Like observability, maybe he should buy the observability book or logging, and so he got in a lot of trouble essentially. But just very funny that that happened. Like, there you go. Be careful with your USB sticks. Don't drink and copy an entire city's worth of data onto a USB stick. That's not a lesson we should have to explain.
One of the massive downsides of those WeWork spots, because I used to work at one of my old job, was I never felt comfortable going out in the city after, because I was living out of the city. You got to take a train home, but then you have your backpack with your laptop on everywhere you go. It's like, I don't want to go to the bathroom and just leave this here. Right? This thing disappears, my job disappears. So it's very, like, I just don't know how you have that USB stick and you walk out. He probably put it in his pocket and just forgot that he left work with it.
Oh, yeah, it does say exactly what his bag. He lost his whole bag, so he lost more than the USB stick.
I mean, you got to just leave it in the office, right?
I guess so.
Like,
yeah.
Why are you taking it home? The whole story is kind of funky. Anyways, sucks to suck for that guy. Feeling for you. Hug ups.
So shall we go on to the next stupid thing?
Yeah.
This might be worse.
Yeah. Did you read the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
You lead it though. It's great.
Yeah. So I found this one. HackerOne employee gets caught stealing vulnerability reports for personal gain. A lot of it has to do with the increased bug bounties. Basically, an internal employee at HackerOne took some vulnerabilities that hadn't been fully disclosed and was kind of funneling them to their hacker friends, hoping to basically exploit them before they became public to get a payout. Very weird.
Yeah.
Especially in security. Like, you're never working in security again now, right?
That's a bad CV item.
I mean, in terms of top bug bounties, you're talking like 300,000 for a massive one. And I gotta think, like, you're doing all this for what, maybe like $30,000?
It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know. I think I thought I read that he was also trying to kind of double down on the bug bounty itself, like by
double dipping,
big time. And I like how you can see the kind of guy he is, right? They started to investigate when one of their customers said they had a suspicious vulnerability disclosure from an individual with the handle Rizzler using aggressive and intimidating language. How does this guy get a job at HackerOne? HackerOne is like pretty elite, right?
Yep.
But yeah,
hey, I mean, that's just not a very smart idea in general. Not really well thought through.
Nope. I guess, well, there's a shortage in security people. Maybe we're occasionally hitting the bottom of the barrel.
It is pretty interesting if you go on any of the threads and it's like, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. Here's my background. Here's all these things. And one of the top things that the manager wrote was, are you trustworthy? It's pretty much, it's why they hire a lot out of the Army and a lot out of, because they've been vetted already, right? You've been vetted up to a certain amount of you're secure, you're stable, you're not going to do these crazy things because of something like this coming out, vulnerability reports leaking. It's a massive hit to a company, right?
Totally. Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting. It's a totally separate topic that we could probably riff on for a while is the idea that, if you work with children, you have to go through a certain background check. If you work all these different places, you have to get background checks. Mm-hmm. Where we are, it's like, you got a pulse and you know what a container is. Welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of software engineering, if you're working with people's data or if you're in somebody like Gretel or something, you're doing data cleaning, I think there should be some sort of, at least maybe a moral and ethics thing when you join a company, right? Or some sort of disclosure.
Some kind of way, some vetting process that seems a little bit more official than just an interview.
But yeah, I mean, they did background checks and things like that when you got hired for at least bigger companies.
Yeah,
I think partially it's like if you committed a crime, you probably shouldn't be in security.
Or unless you were a hacker, in which case you're a good guy hacker now.
You got prosecuted in Missouri for reading HTML web pages.
Yeah,
now you're a hacker.
Exactly, that guy.
All right, we got our last one, I think. Right, this is the exposed Kubernetes clusters. We've talked about this multiple times, but a lot of it, shocker of shocks. There's 9,000, 10,000 exposed Kubernetes clusters. A lot of it's misconfigurations.
It was 900,000.
Is it 900,000? Well, I'm off by a couple factors. Yeah, exposure. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that is crazy. Also, there's a lot of clusters across the world.
Yeah, where's the little handy infographic there?
Yeah.
Come on, United States.
Yeah, I mean, that's also,
of course, it's probably where most of them are.
I think that's a scaling thing, but
yeah,
a lot of tech in the US. It's pretty crazy though. They probably 65%, 900,000. So what, you have 600,000 exposed Kubernetes clusters in some form.
Yeah, like I guess in some form is a good way of putting it, because there's a lot of ways things can be exposed that really aren't.
Yeah, like it technically, if 443 is exposed, is that just considered an exposure? Because
yeah, that's maybe that should be exposed.
Just because you set up an Nginx backend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, 443 is the largest amount there too, the top three. So does that really count?
Yeah, I mean the 6443 is pretty blatant.
Yeah,
and the 10250 is definitely like that's
kubelet, right?
That shouldn't be. Yeah, that shouldn't be there. So those are for sure. Maybe a little boosted by the 443. I don't know.
I think. Hey, I mean, they got us with the headline. They got us reading the article.
Yeah, so. No, it's good. I feel like there's one of these articles comes out pretty regularly. Who did this one? Who was it? Seibel. Don't know who they are. Okay, well, there we go.
Seibel or Jarvis. I don't know who wrote it, but
yeah, good point. All right, excellent. That is the end of the WTF section.
Now we're throwing that money in the air. We're normalizing things on this show. We take things that are insecure and we normalize them. I kicked Steve out, so he's like working in the back end to try to bring this up to the stream. Oh, you had it.
There it is.
There it is. Yes, Normalize. Normalize announces 22.2 million in Series A funding. I think that brings them up to 30. I think is what I saw.
Okay. When was it there?
Maybe not.
Their
Maybe
seed
that's the
was.
next. Oh, there it is. 26.6 million to date.
Okay.
And API security. So security history veterans from Qualys, basically a bunch of people bled over. They saw how much money Wiz was making, and they said, let's make a cloud platform that just scrapes cloud APIs and tells you your risk portfolio.
Framing a model. And then I already clicked through this, got excited, and it didn't work. Oh, that could be my VPN.
It's basically like plug us in, give us access to your cloud APIs. We'll scrape everything, tell you your identity, all of your setup, and then you can decide how you probably want to enforce it. I'm guessing that's the model. Because it's the best thing. It's like, here's all your issues. You have to pay us if you want us to make any changes, or if you want to use our platform to make changes.
So is this going to be like Salt security, you think, or is this a little bit more techy?
Salt API, Salt's like application API for your applications that you're building. This is just Wiz. So it's like, oh, you're on Azure and AWS, and you want to figure out how your identities map out and what's insecure and what's secure. Okay, you have this AWS IAM misconfiguration. Here you go. Here's how you fix it. Right.
So it's like Wiz.
That was my take from it. And literally, it's our agentless data discovery and scanning platform is easy to connect to any cloud account, AWS, Azure, GCP, right? So,
and they say the word agentless, which means they're just piggybacking on that marketing.
Yeah. Well, typically, whenever you think security and it's agentless, it means they're scraping an API, because you're not getting anything hard without an agent.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Good. Well,
I really broke down that marketing lingo there for you.
Thanks. Good one. And we have, how many do we have? Just two today, right?
Just two. Yeah.
We got the
buckle up, buckaroos.
15 million Series A identity security challenges.
Yeah.
Did you check these guys out? What do they?
I did a little bit of background. I think the use case they're trying to solve for, because you had a great GitHub Actions demo, was it 2 weeks ago, right? And hey, you can steal a GitHub token, and everything is OAuth, it's token, it's HTTPass or something like that. There's a bunch of different ways to manage identity. So how are you going to plug into all those different ways and make sure that as your team scales and all those workflows scale and you have all these tokens and authentication systems, how do you make sure they're all secure? So I think that's kind of what they're trying to go for, is now authentication isn't only the user, but it's also, what GitHub accounts do you have access to? What workflows are there? Did you just give them admin rights to deploy things, right? That's my guess.
It looks like it. Yeah. Like so my immediate thoughts on competition would be Permit.io, because they are similar, right? Very policy fueled identity. And I always get around authorization and authentication management.
Yeah.
So it's similar concept. What a surprise that another company that does it just pops up immediately after I heard of the first one. I guess my main question is, like, are they based in Israel? Probably. No, it doesn't.
I almost think that a lot of these spin-offs are it's software that you could write internally, but it's a massive hurdle to hire and go through that whole process at big companies. So it's you just take that idea, you get funding from your company to do it, but you go around all of the internal hurdles, right, at the big company to build it.
That's a good point.
It feels like with some of these.
I think a lot of startups come from the idea that I can build this internally. Why, if I can do that, why would I do that?
Yeah,
I'll just leave and make a startup, and then they could buy it from me.
Yeah, a lot of the big companies invest in the same companies that they buy, right?
Yeah.
So it's cheap for them. It's like, oh, Google picked up this company. Well, yeah, Google's 50% of the seed funding. So of course they're going to buy it at a discount too, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and you get to say, oh, hey, go and build this and use Google's all of our software internally in your company, and then it's easy to merge too. It's actually a genius idea.
So crazy.
There you go. All right, into the meaty stuff. Bunch of CVEs.
Right.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
I got this one. Not necessarily a CVE. We'll end with the good stuff. But this was something that caught my eye. The open cloud vulnerability. Where's the screen? Let's get it up so you can see. There we go. Cloud vulnerability and security issue database. And you can sort of filter. That's probably hard to see on the screen, but AWS, GCP, Azure, then critical and high. Like there's some tags you can do to say, okay, I want the AWS, I want the critical ones. Mm-hmm. And it's really only to do with cloud providers, it seems. So if you want to see what's going on, it seems like a subset of what would be maybe like just NVD, I guess. I don't really understand its purpose completely.
Yeah, I think if you think of feeds like a NIST feed or something like that, a lot of it has to do with the underlying program. So it'll be a Python issue or a C++ or a Go or Java has this issue, but you don't really get the, hey, Azure's service itself is misconfigured as a CVE, right? Like, so I kind of understand, hey, we're using Azure. We want to know whenever there's a big Azure vulnerability disclosed so we can go and look at our services to see if we're impacted, right? So it's kind of one of those new fees. It's aggregating it all. Now, how well it does that, I don't know. And what format they do it in, right? Do they use OVAL?
Yeah, you good point. I don't know. I don't know much about it. It just crossed my path, and I thought, well, if you want to check it out, then put some comments below. Maybe we'll have a deeper dive on it, and then come back to you with a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty cool too, because it actually says like who found it as well. So I mean, one of the top ones there is Fabricscape, which is Azure Service Fabric Privilege Escalation, and it was found by Palo Alto. And then underneath, Azure's Open Management Infrastructure Elevation of Privilege, and it was Microsoft. So it's kind of it seems like everybody is working to disclose these things.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
That's actually pretty cool attribution. Click through on that. There you go.
Yeah, there's a nice little shout out.
There you go. A little bit of Palo Alto love going there. Pretty recent too. Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, so I like that. And then more onto the real deal. Going to the competing vulnerability database. It's considerably uglier, actually, now that I look at it.
Yeah, this is GitLab. GitLab had a 9.9 vulnerability. I think this is actually 9. This is the second 9.9 that they've had in the last month, I believe.
That's close to 10. That's
yeah. It's possible for an unauthorized user to execute arbitrary code on the server using a project import feature.
I would love to see a demonstration of this. There's very little information here. Have you seen anything more than just this reference?
I was searching it before, and I really couldn't find much. This came out a couple days ago, I believe, or at least came across my screen a couple days ago. If you do see anything, I'd love to hear it. But I think there was like a 2022 2186 as well that was also a 9.9.
Right. Related?
I don't know. There's GitLab, and then you actually have another. I think Jenkins is coming up, right, for a CVE.
Yeah.
So you give the talk on that, and I'll see if I can come up with anything worthwhile on this one.
On the CI scheme. Wow, this isn't even a CVE. All right, let me just zoom in on this because.
Oh yeah.
When I was back in the day, in a previous life at Synopsys, we used to do static analysis tools and sell those. And so in order to convince people that you had a good tool, you'd want to scan some code. You wouldn't scan something like WebGoat because you knew it was vulnerable. And so you knew you'd find things. So my go-to was always Jenkins because it was written in Java. It was started in like 2008 or 9. And I had all sorts of dodgy, sloppy stuff from way back then that had been spaghettied over, and it was a guarantee you could find stuff that you could exploit that made for a fun demo. So when this one came out on July 1st, Jenkins discloses dozens of zero-day bugs, dozens, not A1, in multiple plugins. Jenkins is still amazingly highly used, but then, even though they announced 34 security vulnerabilities, 29 different plugins, still waiting to be patched on July 1st. Happy Canada Day. But yeah, I mean, these are the old school, the OG cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, which are mostly like a thing of the past, except for the code's so old, it probably doesn't really have everything in it. The ability to expose passwords, secrets, API keys, just basically everything. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, someone did what I would do, of course, right away is run a Shodan search. And what's great is that there's even a link to the Shodan search to try and see how many exposed Jenkins servers exist. And there's like almost 150,000. Why? Never, ever have your Jenkins exposed. It's not designed to be a SaaS service. Never. It's meant to be internal only. You're crazy if you're doing that. Anyway, there's a list.
So
that's pretty
I
big.
I got a great addition to this.
Oh, yeah.
So shout out to Landsweeper on YouTube, and I'm going to post this in the chat.
Okay.
Because there is a video showing how to find all of the GitLab servers that are exposed to the 9.9 vulnerability.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I just I'm not going to put it on because I really don't know what the content is, but you can go and check it out for yourself. There's only 200 views, and it came out 3 days ago.
All right. Well, a little bit of homework for the end of my day. Grab a beer and watch some exploits.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool.
Nice.
Actually, would be pretty fun. I might do that too. Well, not yet. Beer later.
Beer later.
All right.
Well, okay.
You ready? It's tool time. Right? That's what time it is?
Does everybody know what time it is?
All right. We this has been a pretty tight show. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
That means because we both have meetings at the top of the hour, so we're not going to overrun like we always do. Quick show can be a good show. I'm introducing everything in order. So the demo I wanted to show you was a set of tools introduced by a open source group or organization called sigstore, which is just here. A new standard for signing, verifying, and protecting software.
Oh, look at all those sponsors at the bottom real quick. Can you go back to that page before?
In collaboration with OpenSSF, ChainGuard, our services company. I imagine they have products. But they're largely pushing sigstore, same people. Cisco, Google, HP, Purdue University.
I was just shocked Purdue got in there.
One of these things does not belong, kind of.
That's kind of what piqued my interest when I was just looking through. I'm like, Purdue,
what the heck? What are you doing there?
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Back to the
uni project. All right, great. So SLSA is a guideline, let's say, for achieving supply chain security. The whole big problem, spurred on by the big ones, CodeCov and SolarWinds last year, was the idea that you are falsely trusting artifacts that you are using in your build without any real check. It's the soft boiled egg scenario where once you're in your build, you're no longer exhibiting zero trust. In fact, you're almost exhibiting 100% trust, which is bad. So SLSA came out of that with these 4 levels that are associated with it, saying level 1. Well, actually, I can quickly the levels. It's not that complicated, but some of the requirements for the levels are, which is where that's a response sigstore, which is a nice tight package of tools. Of the 4 levels, if you say essentially, if you use Git or GitLab or anything that is a version control system as a service, certainly, you're already won.
Yeah.
You already got it, because the requirements for 1 are version control and the ability to create provenance.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that Git logs everything it does and creates a history is the provenance that passes you on 1. So you're done. Boom. Mm-hmm. And then it gets a little bit more dicey when you're into 2, and it wants you to not make sure you're never using your own laptop. Like this, that's what they're trying to make you do. Like, make sure a service is running your build. It's always scripted. You're using infrastructure as code for your builds, and you are signing, not the ability to. You're proving some form of provenance. Mm-hmm. There was a talk, and I don't know if you saw it, that was at the open source conference you just went to.
Yep.
Where a guy was showing, okay, well, because he was arguing that his provenance was the Git log, and I'm like, and you could sign the Git log afterwards via API. It has kind of the minimum information in it, but it seemed like super dodgy. Mm-hmm. And then you get onto really more proper automation, so non-falsifiable, like proper provenance, non-falsifiable security controls, checking the host itself to make sure this is more of a manual process. was it ephemeral and independent runners, so that one build does not affect the other.
Yep.
And then when you get to the top,
You don't want caching across builds, I'm assuming, is what.
right, you got to have caching off and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a good list of things. There's only like the difference between every level. There's only at most like 5 to 6 different controls that get you to the next level. So it is very well weighted, except when you get to 4, where I think you're being very flexible in your interpretation of 4 if you think you've accomplished it, because it really does mean everything is SHA pinned in every dependency anywhere you're using. Ideally, you're using cosine verify to verify the transitive dependencies that you are dependent upon. So you can affirm you've checked the provenance of your dependencies. Like, really? Can anybody do that? That's like salsa nirvana. So anyway, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. For most people, this would be really hard to accomplish.
Yeah,
I think
it's actually interesting too, because Google put out their open source. What is it? Their vetted open source libraries, right? And you kind of understand internally what they're trying to do is say, okay, well, here are the libraries. If you want to achieve salsa level 4, you can use these libraries because it's 2-party reviewed. We vetted it, right? So now there's a whole, hey, don't just pull any dependency, pull the ones that the cloud platforms have vetted, right?
Yeah, this works in their favor.
Interesting. Yeah,
totally. Well, this all comes from Google, right? They had their thing called, I can't remember what it's called, but like software assurance for Borg. It had a title that was different, not very catchy, and then it became Salsa, and now it's sort of a real thing. And obviously, Google's doing the right things, leading by example to do it. Sigstore is like, if you read Salsa and you're like, all right, I'm never getting past 2. This is impossible. I'm going to have to use like SSH keygen maybe to do some signing, but then what do I do with the results of the signing? How do I make sure that the provenance isn't tamperable? Like, there's a lot of bits and pieces out there that you could probably Frankenstein together. But Sigstore kind of came to the rescue with a collection of tools that do this: sign, verify, monitor, and then you roll down and you go, all right, so I have cosign, which is a tool that will sign anything essentially. And then Recore, which is essentially blockchain. It's just I was wondering who hosts the blockchain, but there is a public Recore that you can just use for open source projects. Cosign's free. And then finally, this is the one I never know how to say. How would you say? Fulcio or Fulcio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fulcio?
I don't know. Fulcio sounds better. Let's do that.
Very nice.
And without showing, yeah, what's that? Was the Gucci movie? Lots of bad Italian accents.
Yeah.
So the connectivity between this is that you can run cosign. You can create your own key pair with it, like you can do with other tools, and then you can sign an artifact, and it will actually take care of storing the artifact for you. And I'm going to show you what that means. If you want to do keyless signing, so essentially temporary keys based on and have your identity associated with the signature, so that's way better. That means the workflow, the person, the identity, like way more data in there. Then you use cosign and you don't give it a key, and then it will use the publicly accessible Fulcio. And if it doesn't already have an identity, it will use OpenID and get you and pop up a browser if you do it on your own computer and get you to log in with GitHub, Microsoft, or Google. And once you log in, it uses the OIDC. It combines that with the signing process of the signature, allows you to create a temporary sort of signing key that expires almost immediately, and then shoves that into the Recore blockchain and returns you a thumbs up, which you can then reverse using a cosign verify, which then follows the sort of the same chain. And it says, yep, that's definitely a signed artifact that is stored in an immutable blockchain, but was it not tamper-proof blockchain, but tamper evident, they call it a tamper evident blockchain. So if someone messes with it, you can always tell, right? That's how blockchains work.
Yeah.
So this is like they have the components you can use Recore on its own. So you can use the Recore CLI, sign it using anything you want, and use the CLI just to punch it straight into the Recore blockchain if you just don't want to use cosign and Fulcio.
Interesting.
And you can deploy Recore via Helm into your own Kubernetes cluster and implement an entirely internal signing process with just Recore. That's pretty cool.
That is.
And so all of these, this was cool enough after I got to the end that, maybe there's a good diagram down
So
there.
all of that, I was going to say, this sigstore ecosystem is all of those components, correct?
Yeah, right. And all of these equal sigstore. And I've seen a bunch of videos on this now in researching, like, all right, what are the alternatives?
Mm-hmm.
And I have yet to see a manual alternative that comes even close to being as good as this, like, just does it thing. Mm-hmm. And it's, what a surprise. All of the written specs for SLSA say, you must have provenance that has this, 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 and this. And when I read the SLSA before I saw what Cosine did, and I'm like, this is so hard. And then I go and do it and went, oh no, it just does it. Like, if you just use sigstore, you can get to 3 like that. You can be on SLSA 3. It's so simple. So that's kind of where I was going. And I've got, you can read up Fulcio here.
Doesn't tell you how to say it in there, does it?
Yeah, that would be good, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's a better way of describing it. A new kind of root CA for code signing. So certificate authority that's using OADC to establish. So that's pretty cool. And then over here, you've got Recore. Yeah, I'm sure they all have fancy logos. Recore record. And essentially, it's a tamper-resistant ledger. So it's a blockchain like Bitcoin, essentially. But it's not destroying the world's ecosystem. And then here is my plaything where I was doing some container signing. I'm going to come back to that, and then I'm just going to see it jump over here. So it's, let me get out of here so I can do some stuff from scratch. ADR C9K test. Boom. All right, so now I got nothing. So that's a little bit more realistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got cosigns. All of this stuff installs pretty much using Brew. So
really, so it's just locally on your Mac.
I've just got cosign here, right?
Very cool. CLI.
It does by default need Docker running, so I had to flip my Rancher desktop to Docker desktop because it wasn't working. So, little warning there. You can say, I don't want to use the Docker hub. I want to use something different, and that is, you'll see that at the end in the GitHub action. I use GitHub Container Registry because it's easier, right? But there's verify blob, sign, and sign blob. Sign and sign blob are the 2 main commands that I think pretty much do everything. Sign assumes you're a container image. Blob assumes you're a binary thing.
Yeah.
But blob for me, that used to be for me a binary, like a compiled image or a tar, but really they don't care. It can be like anything at all.
Just an underneath file system.
Yeah, exactly. So like the idea
is just like basically signing the layers, right? And kind of hashing it all together.
Essentially, and then base 64. So say this is the simplest Docker image ever. So I create a crappy Docker, and I need to go to a unique name. So let me let's do that and put dots on there. This is kind of like most things can be containerized. If you're like afraid of, like, we have Python projects, right? And we do release it as a container as well as a Python executable. Python has a lot of dependencies, and it can be a little bit crazy to sign. So some of my work I'm trying to do now is like, how do I sign? Did I get that wrong? Be my eyes and ears. What did I screw up?
Tag flag is reference.
Do you think I have like a weird cut and paste, like invisible
Docker build? I don't know. Could be. Hello image, maybe semicolon 0.1.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just had
that
some
was
invisible shit in there, didn't I?
Oh yeah, invalid argument. There it is. U00A0. Anyways. Yeah, it should be a quick build. There you go.
Yeah, that's like absolutely nothing in it. It doesn't do anything, so that's fine. So I can just run a Docker push. Let's see, make sure that it doesn't. This is the worst thing ever, right? I'm going to push it with no tag, so it's going to give it latest.
That's you're committing a sin.
I know. All
right, so now, gotcha. There it is. Now it's in your Docker.
Some people think that's okay, registry. and that I didn't do the key pair, so all I did was create the directory. So I'm doing it pretty hardcore. So you can just run. You can create a password, you can not. So say I create a password on it. Which way? I can type. There we go. And now you can see I have my private key and my public key. So Cosign even does that for you, which I thought was pretty sweet. And I pushed it, so now I can do the signs. And it see, I notice I haven't told it where it is, right? It just seems to know that it's using Docker Hub. That is the default.
Okay.
I already forgot what I called it.
Don't tell us your password.
But you see this bit here? I don't know if it's like too small. Let me know if it's too small. It says
pushing signature to index. Yeah.
To your gig hello image. All right. So this is why I took too long to do mine. Because I was like, what do you mean pushing signature to hello image? I didn't quite understand what it meant by that. And hello image is there. All right. So it was
interesting.
So it's in here now. There we go. So you see that there's this.
Yep.
Right. Latest. Well, what's this? There's another thing here that is tagged with the SHA of the previous one. You see this is the start of here,
yep.
But it's got a .sig on it. So this is what it's done is that it's made the signature based on the key. It's pushed the signature to Docker Hub as if it were an image that is part of my hello image, but tagged it with the SHA of the original image, thus drawing a link between the two. But the image isn't an image. It's actually the signature. It's not one you can run or do anything with. It's using... this is where I thought it was super hacky, because I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah. Where's this
You're
going?
just using Docker Hub as a storage facility now.
Yep.
That's weird.
Okay.
So that was what I thought was kind of funky in the background a little bit, right? So that was like, So there's that. But I kind of don't care. It works, right? If that's, I had no idea you could not push container images to Docker Hub and it would go, sure.
Yeah, I remember Docker is trying to pivot from being like a container storage to an artifact hub. I've heard that term been used.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
store more than containers, right?
That's essentially what I think it's doing, or what it's being used for. And then the other version is I can say echo, Mike, do my C9K text. And then the other way to do it is, again, the exact same thing I did before. Cosign with a key, identifies payload, bing, bing, bing. And then I get, hey, the weird, now I have the goofy signature here.
Okay.
So what's weird is if you sign by default for a blob, it doesn't automatically push the blob. It gives you this weird, and the signature. It is not doing the same thing. There's like an additional step you got to do. Like, so if I do, like, I can verify this now, but I don't have the object stored anywhere in connection with this signature. So in order to verify locally, I'd have to say, verify the blob, use the signature. There's the signature. I'm going to forget the equal on the end probably. And then my C9K text, I think. But I didn't type. All right, C9K text. Yeah. So that's use that, and it's verified that this artifact I have sitting in front of me is in fact the one that was signed, ideally somewhere else earlier by a build process, and I'm now borrowing it. But then how do I store this?
Yeah,
like,
where does that go?
Right. So this is like a blob version of it. So now I've got a little bit of headache on my hands. But kind of like to the rescue again. They have an upload blob. Here's the file.
Okay.
Stick it there. And guess where it's going to stick it? In my Docker Hub.
Pretty cool.
So now it's using Docker Hub. So now I just have blobs. I can put Python files in there. I can do anything. And they're all re-verifiable. So I actually thought...
So you can pull that blob from Docker
Yeah.
Point it to the C9K.txt file and say, is this the same file that got signed? And it would say yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
There's
very
also
cool.
other little perks, like they have an SBOM, so you can do an attach.
Oh, okay.
So you can build an SBOM with Sift or Chekhov or whatever does SBOMs for you, and then you can attach the SBOM. But then you have to go through the cosign sign SBOM and sign it. So you end up with 2 signatures, signing your SBOM to make sure it's all good. So it's all kind of turns into a bit of a Russian dolly sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Using SBOMs to encapsulate your application and what's in it, but then you could just screw with the SBOM. So you need to make sure the SBOM's actually signed too, right?
Right. Yeah,
That
because
is,
like the SBOM is meant to be authorized just as much as the So then the final version is like, say I create a new file called keyless, and this is experimental. So as you'll see in like 2 seconds. So if I do that, cosine, oh, that's actually not right. I don't want to do export. I just want to say cosine experimental equals 1 because the export is incorrect. Oh, by the way, if you're doing the course, that's a bug on the course. That shouldn't say export. Then you can actually tell it to keep the signatures locally, and you can do that. And what did I do?
Oh, can't do that.
Yeah, you can. It's just I'm getting some weird cut and paste. Not like, look at this. The sign blob. What is that nonsense text, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sign blob / okay, what are you doing? I think I'm just cutting, because I'm cutting and pasting. There we go.
Oh, yep.
Something strange in there. I think it's the generating ephemeral keys. So this is now it's using Fulcio.
Okay.
And so I'm saying yes, and now you can't see this, but it's just launched my browser on the other screen. And I'm logging into sigstore with GitHub, which I've already logged in, and it's going to finish.
Very cool. So now that is.
So now I have the cert, and then I'm because we're running out of time. Now you're probably thinking, it used Fulcio, it gave me all the certs. This little bit, now you probably saw this a few times already. Almost every time I've run, there's a little thing called tlog entry. And if I do, I'm trying to screw this up with cut and pasting. I think so. You have the recourse CLI again. You can just install it. You can start with Go, and it goes to the default recourse server. And so this log, that is the entry ID. -- log or -log?
I think it should be --.
What does it say here? Log index. There we go. I'm just remembered it wrong. This is what happens when you prepare these demos 5 seconds beforehand. So there we go. You can use recourse CLI to check the thing. So you can see the timing. It's 1 hour off, but it's pretty much that was 1 minute ago. And you can grab that. And if I were to grab this and base64 decode it, that'll be my signature.
It's the certificate. Gotcha.
There's my cert. So it's all like, it's really easy and really fast. And the last thing I did, which I'm just going to show, was the container signing one. And this is my package that was called container signing. Last thing I'm going to do before you tell me to hurry up is this, where it installs cosign, builds an image, logs into the local thing, and then just runs the experimental cosign, this repository, everything's local, push steps, output, digest, bang. And it does all of the Recore Fulcio verification, signing, pow, gives you a tlog ID, and you can then verify it using cosign verify or using Recore CLI in a further step if you need to use this artifact. Done.
And yeah, awesome. That was great. And you can think of, in terms of the applicability of it, you have all these dependencies. Part of the build process is, hey, here are all my Go dependencies. Run and go and check to say, hey, this is the exact one. It does a quick check, because that was extremely quick, probably like not very heavy in terms of the build process. And it's like, yep, like all of the dependencies are verified. continue the build, right? And
Yeah.
if it fails it, it's like, well, what happened to this dependency? Is there an issue upstream? What's going on?
Sure.
Right.
I think even you could run cosign on everything, and if it just says there's no entry in any log for any of this, you might just keep the build process going. But it might be interesting to modify your SBOM to say what is signed and what isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's almost awareness to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an entry for this? No. Okay. Well, maybe is there alternative packages that we could be using? Like maybe we go look upstream to see maybe how healthy it is, right? Because then you go and look, and there's one member maintaining this massive package that you use.
Right. Yeah, he hasn't got crap about salsa.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was awesome. Very cool. And that's basically the 8-hour course just distilled down.
Yeah, I blasted
minutes.
through that. I mean, they get you to do the SBOM. They even get you to install a local recore on your local Kubernetes, so you can play with it locally. So you got all that in the course. So obviously it takes longer.
Very cool. Thanks, Steve. Any final words before we head out? Enjoy the weekend.
No. If you got any questions, if you got any questions about salsa, like find me on the OpenSSF or sigstore Slack. I'd love to talk more about it. So I'm going to start getting more vocal as I make questions about things I don't understand.
Very cool. And we'll be at Reinforce at the end of the month. If anybody's watching and going to be showing up, ping us. We'd love to catch up and probably talk about Reinforce next week. So see you next Friday, same time. Signing off.